Hello everyone, thank you very much for clicking on this video. This is part 2 of the video series, and in this video I'm going to show you how to get EVE-NG in Google Cloud. And so the first thing I wanted to do is direct you to these two resources in case I might have skipped something or you wanted more coverage on maybe how to secure your virtual machine a lot better. So the first one is on GitHub, is by Nico, and it is EVE-NG in Google Cloud. And second one is the EVE-NG Professional Cookbook, pages 41 through 50. I'll make sure to include the links to both of these websites in the description below, but I thought I would just mention that the EVE-NG Pro Cookbook is based on the latest version of Eve, which is, or actually latest version of Eve that Ubuntu is based on, which is 1804. The GitHub guide was actually based on when Eve was based on Ubuntu 16.04. So the main difference when running through this guide, if you do decide to follow it partly, is that you don't have to worry about anything related to the kernel. That's not an issue anymore with EVE-NG version, the latest version. So I just thought I'd mention that. But now once you're ready to actually jump into Google Cloud, you want to head to cloud.google.com. And here is where you can click Get Started for free. One thing I think I might have forgot to mention in a previous video is why use Google Cloud? Well, they give you a $300 free credit to use within 12 months, so a year. And what you could do is uh, follow along and actually set up your lab on Google Cloud. You should probably have a good amount of time that you can use to use your lab. Um, Once your credit is up, they won't actually charge you until I believe you switch to a pay-as-you-go. So they are going to require your credit card details, but they won't charge you immediately. You have to make sure to set that up on your own. So like I said, you want to click Get Started for free. You might have to go through some pages after you sign into your Google account, enter your credentials and credit card information. You might have to click Activate. There might be a little blue banner on the top, similar to this page, where it will pop up and you'll click Activate so you can activate your $300 credit. Now that we're here, this is what you should probably start off with when logging into Google Cloud once you got everything set up. What we're going to do now is we're going to navigate to the compute engine where we are going to set up the VM. So in order to do that, I'm going to go up to the navigation menu right here. I will go down to compute engine. Once we are on the compute engine page, you can see that we've got several options right here. We can create, import, take the quick start. We won't worry about those for right now. What we need to do first is open up the Cloud Shell and create a custom Ubuntu 18.04 image that has the ability to use nested virtualization, also known as VMX. So having a virtual machine inside a virtual machine, which is something crucial that EVE-NG requires. So you cannot just use a standard Ubuntu 18.04 server release. You have to actually go ahead and create one that has VMX enabled out of the box. So I'm going to click on Activate Cloud Shell right here. This will take a few moments to set up. You should probably see a menu down around right here where it says continue. It's just telling you that it's free for everyone to use. And once it's actually popped up, you're going to want to paste in this command. It's going to run through and actually create the custom image for you. So it's Ubuntu 18.04 LTS, and it's going to enable VMX. This should take a few moments, so please be patient, and I will resume the video once its status is ready. Alright, so now it's done. We can see that it says status is ready. So now we are actually ready to go ahead and continue to create the virtual machine. So I'm going to close out of the Cloud Shell right here. And I am going to create a VM instance. Now for the SD-WAN lab, I am going to provision a VM that has 16 cores and 32 gigabytes of RAM. So for the topology that you might upload and use, it might be a bit overkill, but once you start adding more edge devices, more C edges, more V edges, it'll start to eat up more RAM and more CPU. So right before we get started, you'll notice right here that as you click on different options, your monthly estimate and your hourly estimate might change. The monthly estimate refers to if you run this machine 24/7 for a month, how much it's going to cost you. So it would be $24.67 right off the bat, or how much it would cost you hourly. Also, in your case, you might see that you have $300 of free trial credit remaining. I have been using this my Google Cloud account several times, so of course mine is a lot less. Nevertheless, we're going to name the VM right now. I'm going to just call it Eve. And your region and zone should be left at its default. Maybe you might select some different region and zone that's maybe closer to you. Keep in mind that might affect what cost it might be for your virtual machine. And now I'm going to select how many cores and how much CPU, or sorry, how many cores and how much RAM I want to use for a virtual machine. So to do that, I'm going to select the machine type right here. I'm going to select custom, and this menu pops up. I'm going to type in 16 cores, and then for memory, I'm going to type in 32 gigabytes. Now what we're going to do is actually set up the boot disk. Make sure that for sure this option is unchecked, so you do not want to deploy a container image to this VM instance. To get the boot disk set up, you want to click on change right here. This menu will fly out, and then navigate over to custom images. So it's going to start loading up. This will take actually a few moments, and now it's actually loaded up. So under image, you want to select the nested virt Ubuntu image, and you have three different storage types. You have your standard persistent disk, which is the slowest. You have your balance, which is a bit faster, and then you have your SSD, which is the fastest. In my case, I'm just going to allocate 150 gigabytes under SSD. So of course, the faster you select depending on what boot disk you select, it will correlate to how fast your VMs can boot up. So your controllers, your orchestrator, your edges. So it's recommended if you can't select an SSD, or at the very minimum balance if you want to. So I'm going to click on select, and it loaded up right here. So I'm going to be using a 150 gigabyte volume SSD persistent disk using the image nested virt Ubuntu. If I scroll up, you can see that my monthly estimate actually changed to about a little over 50 cents an hour. And I will now go down and actually configure some security settings and some IP settings. So for the firewall, I will make sure to allow HTTPS traffic, so we can allow access to the EVE-NG GUI when we access it. And now I'm going to provision a public IP address. So there are two types before I jump in. There are the ephemeral ones, which change every time you either reboot the machine or shut it down. And then there is a static one, which you'll create. That one costs a little bit more money, but you would use that one if you want to keep the same IP address no matter what, even if you shut down the VM or reboot it or whatever may happen. So I'm going to select the menu right here. I'm going to scroll up, and I'm going to select the networking tab. So I'm going to click network interfaces right here. I don't have to worry about the internal IP. I'm just going to worry about external. So right here, you have the option between none, ephemeral, and create. In my case, I created some other IP addresses, but I'll just go ahead and create a new one. So I'm going to click create IP address, and I type in the name of YouTube. You can call it whatever you want. Keep in mind the name is permanent, and you have the options between standard and premium. Premium is fine for me, and then I'm going to click on reserve. It will take a few moments to reserve. This menu will shortly disappear, and then we should see that the external IP address is actually created. In this case, it is 35.225.16.107. You don't have to write this down right now. we will be able to see this from the compute engine dashboard. So now what you can do is click done. And in case you're wondering, this is how much for this walkthrough, how much the virtual machine will cost me. So it's about $0.506 hourly. And if I kept this running for 24/7, it would be $369.43. All right, so I'm gonna click on create. Later on in the video, I'll also show you how to actually shut down your VM properly so you don't have to keep running 24/7 and can use it a lot longer. So in this case, the VM is actually starting to get provisioned. It has the name of Eve, and it will be ready once there's a green check mark and once we can see the external IP. From then on, we will actually go and configure some commands in the Linux CLI so we can be able to either access this from another terminal emulator such as PuTTY or Secure CRT. We're also going to rename the NIC and then finally install EVE-NG Pro and the Docker container images. So now that this is up, we want to click on connect right here under SSH, and it'll bring up a console to the server. This will take a few moments to connect, so please be a bit patient. So it's transferring SSH keys to the VM. And once this gets loaded, what I'm going to do first is check for any updates, and if there is any, upgrade them. So I'm going to elevate myself to root privileges. What I'm going to do to do that is type in sudo su. We could see now that it says root at Eve instead of Mike at Eve. And I know there are no packages to be installed or updated, but just in case you might be running this on your own, there might be some packages to update. I'm going to hit Control V on the keyboard to type this in, apt update and apt upgrade -y, which means to check for any updates, install any upgrades, and accept the defaults, which is Y to install. Remember, you have to be running this from root privileges, so you can't run it through your normal account. Once you're ready, you'll just hit enter, and it'll run through all the repositories to find if there's any updates. And in this case, there shouldn't be, or actually there are some updates, and you could see it's actually going through and installing them. So depending on how many updates there are, this might take a good amount of time or not. And in this case, it is done. So it says root at Eve right here, and there is no other characters, so we are done. Now what we're going to do is actually set a root password. So in order to do that, from the root privileges, I'm going to type in passwd, hit enter once, and it'll prompt me to enter my Unix password. I'm just going to use the default of Eve. Of course, like I said, you can find those guides and actually see if you can secure your VM much further. And I'm going to retype my password. So as you can notice, when I retype something in, no characters will pop up for security reasons. Just keep that in mind that if you do type something, you are actually typing something. Now what I'm going to do, if I wanted access to this VM through something like Secure CRT or PuTTY, is I'm going to permit both root login and password authentication. The password authentication is really just required if you create a separate user account and assign a password, if you wanted to connect initially through that. But I'll show you both ways on how to allow yourself to log in through SSH. So in order to do that, I'm going to use a CLI program called Nano, and I'm going to navigate through /etc/ssh/sshd_config. I'm going to hit enter, and it will show this up. So using your arrow keys, I'm going to go down all the way to where it says permit root login. I'm going to delete the pound sign that's in front of it. You can notice it becomes white. Going to go to the end of the line and delete the prohibit-password. I'm going to type in yes, and then as well as password authentication. Yes, exactly like this. So both should be typed in like this. So each word should be capitalized. And once you're got this typed in, to exit, you hit Control X on your keyboard, Y to save the buffer, and then enter to actually go ahead and save the file. So now we can actually be able to access this once we restart the VM, which will happen once we get the EVE-NG Pro installed. We can access this through either Secure CRT or PuTTY or whatever you might be using. Now what I'm going to do is rename the network interface card. So with EVE-NG you have to rename the network interface card so that it shows up as ETH0. If not, EVE-NG is going to complain because EVE-NG prefers to use a NIC interface with the address of ETH0 to function correctly. So I'm going to Control V and paste this command in. Uh, as mentioned before, these commands will be available under the description in case you wanted to, just copy and paste and not type in the whole lines. So I'm going to hit enter. Similarly, it's going to pull up Nano, and in this one, it's actually the output's blank. So what I'm going to also do is copy this command right here and hit paste through Control V, and we could see that it assigns this MAC address and assigns this interface of ETH0. So now to exit once again and save, I'm going to hit Control X, Y, and then enter to save the persistent net rules. Now we are almost ready to install, or actually we are now ready to install EVE-NG Pro. So what I'm going to do now is right click, copy, and paste this in. So this will take a good amount of time to actually download and install. Once you're ready, you'll hit enter. And I am actually going to go ahead and pause the video and resume once it's ready. Keep in mind that all these commands, just remember if you're encountering any errors, have to be run in root privileged mode. So now this is actually done installing. So it installs, it's finished when it says exit right here. And now what we're going to do is go ahead and install the EVE-NG Dockers. So I'm going to enter a few times. I'm going to type in apt install eve-ng-dockers. And this will again take a few moments to go ahead and actually process and download. Actually, while this is downloading, what I'm going to do right now is create a firewall rule in Google Cloud that allows me to properly access telnet of the Cisco devices once I get them up. So to do that, I'm going to just drag this out. You can go ahead and minimize this. I'll move it to the side. What I'm going to do is click on go back to the compute engine or wherever you were in Google Cloud. And then I'm going to go back and click on navigation menu and then scroll down to VPC network. From there, I will go to firewall, and you can see some default firewall rules. I'm going to create a new firewall rule. I'm going to call this EVE-NG ingress. I don't need a description. You could leave this off. Leave this at the defaults. Make sure it's ingress and allow. For targets, I'm going to select all instances in the network. Of course, like I said, you can follow other guides or blog posts on how to further secure your VM. But I'm just going to select all instances in the network. For the IP ranges, I'm going to type in all, so 0.0.0.0/0, which means all IP addresses trying to connect to this VM. I am going to allow specified ports, TCP 32,000 through 65535, which is what EVE-NG uses. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit create right here. And it's going to go ahead and create the firewall rule. This will take a few moments as well. And now it's actually created. We can see that all IP ranges are selected. It is allow and using TCP ports 32,000 through 65535. And actually, while we created that, in order to go back, you click on navigation menu, then compute engine, and this is the dashboard where we were last off. So now I'm going to bring back the terminal. We could see that it actually finished installing the EVE-NG Dockers. Once it says untagged 2 times, that means it's done installing. So now to fully continue, what I'm going to do is actually reboot the VM. So I'm just going to type in reboot now, and it will kick me out of the console. So I'm going to click enter and then close. So give this about a few moments, maybe 10, 20 seconds before you reconnect and hit SSH. And actually from now you can possibly go ahead and copy your external IP and log in using PuTTY or SSH, or sorry, PuTTY or Secure CRT. Just make sure that you accept and save the SSH keys. Now that I give it a few moments, I'm going to go ahead and click on SSH to connect, putting this back up. And we are almost done with the portion on setting up EVE-NG, or actually the setting up the Google Cloud VM. So again, I'll give this a few moments to go ahead and connect. And now it is connected. So before I type in anything else, what I need to do is hit Control-C on the keyboard and type in sudo-I to elevate myself to root privileges so I can successfully continue in the setup. I'm going to click enter. And it'll prompt me to type a root password. So I'm just going to use the same one as I did before. I'm just going to type in Eve. I'm going to repeat the root password. I'm going to leave the host name as the default. Same with DNS. Make sure that DHCP is selected here. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to hit OK. Direct connection, OK. And this will go ahead and actually reboot the VM once more. I'm going to go ahead and hit close. Give it a few moments and reconnect again. Alright, so I opened it back up and we can see that I successfully logged back in. And now we are actually ready for the next part, which I'll show you how to transfer the images and get them installed. And then after that, I'll have another video on how to set up your smart account. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one.